quick video because I want to share a testimony about the results of prayer and fasting. It is an amazing story, and I just haven't had time to tell everybody individually because there is so much going on. So I'm just going to start really quick. Several years ago, my husband had a bad result from getting a shot that was prescribed or heavily pushed by the government, and everybody just jumped on the bandwagon. This was a few years ago. So he got it, and after his booster, he developed a brain infection as a direct result. And the brain infection caused a massive seizure. And the seizure put him in the hospital for 8 days. It took him a long time to figure out what was wrong with him. And after seeing 5 doctors, we had one doctor who was willing to say it was a direct result of the shot. So he ended up with meningoencephalitis, and the brain infection basically killed that part of his brain, which was his short-term memory. So it set us on a path of uncertainty and just really relying on God to open up what our next phase of life is going to look like. And it took a long time. It took us the first 6 months just seeing if he was going to recover, if he was ever going to go back to the way he was. After 6 months, we realized, no, that was not going to happen. There was memory issues. So I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. I had moved to a state for his job where I had no family. The only family in this state was the children we brought with us. So I had a desire to live near my family, my siblings. I needed a good support system because we are getting older in age. We're nearing retirement age. And now with the disability, he wasn't going to be able to have the type of job he had previously, if any job at all. So we didn't do anything for the first year. We were applying for disability, and it took almost 2 years of paperwork and appointments and everything to get the disability set through, which happened just before his 61st birthday. So we got that approved, and that was good. So God was providing for us during that whole time. And really, it's a testimony to God's faithfulness because we didn't deserve anything and we expected nothing, but I just wasn't sure how it was going to pan out. So I just trusted God with every minute of our lives. So after the 2 years of waiting for disability, we had to refigure our lives and think, okay, how are we going to survive on this much money versus what we were used to? And honestly, God took care of every detail. You know, there was a few bumps, but we made it through them and were able to take care of all the things that needed to be taken care of. But I knew on disability and the lower income that the home that we had wasn't going to be practical. I knew that because, you know, just repairs, and the home was 20 years old, so nothing had been repaired or fixed on the home. It was going to start having things that needed to be replaced, like a roof or an air conditioner or a furnace or anything like that, big expense items. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, we have to prepare for this, but with no income, there's no way to really do that. And so to speed up and get to the point, I had really been praying about God. I just needed him to make it very clear to me what to do, if I should move, if I should stay, because moving alone was extremely expensive. And all the previous times that we have moved were paid for by an employer. So it was a very different thing. Like, this would be on us and our responsibility, which is fine. So in our current home, we had 6 of us living there. So I had my 2 adult children still living with us, which I was totally fine with, made me very happy to have them. And they were getting older and wanting to move out and get their own places. But in this economy, it was very expensive. And so they needed roommates and different things. But last fall, I decided it was time to start really thinking about what I was going to do. And we went on a road trip to go visit my family. And we went to Idaho and Utah and Arizona and Louisiana. And we visited everyone. And I really wanted to live by one of my brothers, because I was finding that the simple home repairs weren't able to get done. And I just needed that support system of someone that can just come over and help when we needed things, and just having that. I needed that. And Allie and Noah absolutely love my brother Jeff in Idaho and my brother Chad in Louisiana. And they had so much fun in Louisiana with their cousins, and they voted, oh, if we go anywhere, I would love to live in Idaho or Louisiana. So I'm like, okay. After we did the road trip, we were gone for almost 3 weeks. And I brought it up to James a few times. What do you think about living here? And he was like, no, I don't want to live there. No, I don't want to live there. And every day the answer might change, but I needed consistency, and I wasn't going to do anything or force anything, because I needed everybody to be on board and to be happy with anything that happened. And I was asking God the whole time to give me clarity if I was to go, if I was to stay, because there was different scenarios we could do. We could sell our home and downsize. We could do move back to where we had a daughter in Arizona, or I could go to Idaho and be with my brother, or I could go to Louisiana and be with my brother. There was a lot of choices. So I just never felt any one way or another coming out as, yep, this is it. This is where I want you to go, Sandra. So I never felt that. I just stayed put. And we were all happy and content with that. So in January, my sister and I, we listened to a pastor out of Georgia that has a YouTube channel called End Time Headlines. And he did a prayer and fasting for 3 weeks, starting January 1st of 2024. And we had talked about it. We're like, hey, do you want to do this? Oh, that sounds crazy. That's way too long. Oh, we could never do that. But we decided, let's do it. Let's do our best, and let's just try to do it with them. And he had some really encouraging messages and different things to help support us in the prayer and fasting. But we were both praying and fasting about different things, but also similar things. And so he used Isaiah 58 about prayer and fasting, if you want to look that up and read it for yourself. So based on Isaiah 58, we did the prayer and fasting with him. And my prayer, my biggest one, I had many, but my biggest one was that I would have very clear knowledge of what God wanted me to do, and that my whole family could be on board with whatever decision we made, if we were to move or not to move, and where I should go, because I didn't have any absolute, I have to go here or I have to go there. There was no feeling like that. And I have no preference. I don't feel like I belong anywhere. I've lived all over the country. We've lived in 9 different states. And in the 30 years of marriage, we've moved so many times I can't even count. So I feel like I'm a transient anyway, and I don't belong anywhere, but I have loved many places. I just wanted to be near my family. So that was my only priority. And my sister was praying for clarity on her home, because she was in a rental, and they owned a couple plots of land, and they were getting ready to build. They had done the gravel work and were getting ready to sign off on a loan for the building loan and to break ground when the frost happened. So she was praying about if she should build or if she should find a home to buy. And was always looking at new things on the market. I was praying specifically for where I should move to, or if I should stay where I was and perhaps even do something different. I could get a job and make supplemental income, but that would change our school situation and everything. So I was open to a lot of things. We started this prayer on January 1st of 2024, and we did it every day for 3 weeks. And we had other things we were praying for, but that was our number one priority. Our second and third and fourth priorities were, of course, our children, because they have basically walked away from the church and were prodigal children, or we weren't even sure if they were saved at all because there was no evidence of it in their lives. And we're talking the adult children beyond the age of 22, 23 years old. And between the two of us, we had 4 of those children that fit that age category. We're always praying for them, that things would happen. And we always prayed the whatever it takes, God, whatever it takes to wake up these children. And so the housing and the children was our biggest prayers. And as soon as we started praying, things started to happen. The first week, not much happened, but the one notable item was my sister's husband bumped into a past coworker at the airport when he was on his way to work. And the coworker had mentioned he was, retiring, and him and his wife were selling their home and downsizing. He didn't think anything of it. He's just like, oh, congratulations, and I hope it all works out for you. And then they went on their ways onto different flights. And so a couple weeks go by and nothing. We were praying for multiple things. My daughter had a friend that was going on a job interview, so I added that to my prayer list, and I was praying that she would get the job if that's what God wanted her to have. And it turns out she got the job, so I was really excited. I'm like, woo, he's answering prayers. And there's a list of prayers he was answering. They were smaller, nothing to do with our living situation, but they were prayers being answered. And so 3 weeks later, after we were done praying and fasting, she was getting ready within a week of having to sign her building loan. And another home came on the market, and she lives in Alaska, so there's not a lot of homes that come on the market. But she went and looked at it with her husband and just seeing if it fit what they needed, if it checked all their boxes before they signed their building loan. And they really liked the house. They really liked it a lot. And they thought it might work. It was a little big, but maybe they could rent it out, do an Airbnb or something like that. And she's a stylist, so they could maybe have a hair studio. And, you just don't know. Like, it could have gone any different way. And so they sent me the link, and they're like, yeah, check out this house. We're thinking about it. And we just went and looked at it. It's really nice. We really liked it. And, and I made a joke. And I said, wow, is there room for me in that house? And this is in Alaska, mind you, and I'm in Wisconsin. So she goes, well, actually, kind of funny you say that. It's a really big house. And she sent me the link, and I was looking at it, and it wasn't a serious thought. It wasn't a serious comment. It was just, is there room for me? And it was a joke. And so she sent it to me, and I was like, wow, that's a beautiful home. And so I showed it to my husband, and he's like, wow, that's a really nice house. And then I was joking with him, and he had up to this point told me no about going to Louisiana or going to Idaho. He didn't want to. He was more thinking on Idaho or Utah or Arizona, which I didn't really want to go back to either one of those states. So we couldn't come to an agreement on anything. And so I told my sister, I'm like, well, they're actually interested in it. And so she goes, well, do you want us to go back and look at it a second time? And I'm like, I don't know, it was so far. I mean, we're talking 4,000 miles away. So we didn't do anything the first day. And then I asked my husband the second day to see if his answer was the same. And I said, would you really consider moving to Alaska? And sharing a home with my sister. Is that something that you really want to do? And he said it would be an answer to prayer and a blessing. And I was just taken back. I thought, no way, is this my husband speaking? Because he had agreed with nothing, and this is really far. And so then I asked, we have 2 teenagers, and I asked them, I said, hey guys, what would you say hypothetically if we said we were thinking about moving to Alaska and living with Aunt Lori? And they both teenagers said, yeah, let's go in a second. And I was just like, whoa, seriously? And it shocked me. It shocked me to think that they were all willing. And this wasn't even on my radar, because on our road trip, we didn't go there. It's so far away. I mean, we love them to death, but it's so far. And so I said, actually, guys, they're all serious. And I said, why don't you go look at it again with eyes of, will it work for 2 families and have enough privacy and separation space that we don't get on each other's nerves, and, you know, it could actually work, and we could have the help and support that we need from family, and it would just be a good thing for everybody involved. And so they were like, okay, we'll schedule another appointment with the realtor. In the meantime, my brother-in-law was looking at the listing that the realtor gave him, and he noticed the homeowner's name, and it was a familiar name to him, but he couldn't quite place it. So he was laying in bed one night and just thinking about the name, and he got out of bed and looked it up on Facebook to see what the guy looked like. And it turns out it's the same guy he bumped into at the airport in January during our prayer and fasting. And I said, okay, that's a sign from God. He was talking to you and you didn't relay the message. And now, you know, 5 weeks later, 6 weeks later, it's just coming back to us that all this happened during the prayer and fasting. And so it was even more exciting, right? And so the next day they went to go see the guy's house again, and he was home, and he gave them the grand tour, and they were talking, and, you know, they were reacquainting themselves with each other. And then it turned out that my other brother that lives in Idaho knew the man and actually worked with him on the slope in Alaska, and said he was one of the best workers, the hardest workers. He was meticulous. He took care of everything. This man built this home in Alaska, and it was perfectly done. Like, he took care of everything. It was just the best of care and the maintenance, and he really did a good job all the time. And he was just great character, trustworthy person. And so the man had told him that him and his wife had been praying that God would bring a family to buy this home that could use it to honor and glorify God. And so then my brother-in-law told the man what our situation was, and how we were at a new place in our life where we needed support, we needed to be with family, and this is what we were considering, and we felt like God was leading us here. And the man was teary-eyed, and my brother-in-law was teary-eyed, and it was just like, wow, this is like almost confirmation for all of us that this is in God's will, that we are following God's will. And it just kept happening like this. So then I said, okay, I can't say yes or no, because there's still 2 more children I need to talk to. And I said, unless everybody is 100%, I am not making a move. I'm not going to upset my family. I'm not going to upset my older children, because they still lived in my home. And I know this economy is awful, and it's just, it would be a huge burden. And I didn't want to put my kids out there in this world with such expense. You know, if I said I was going to move, of course, they would always be welcome to move with me to Alaska, but they have so many friends in Wisconsin that they have made in the 4 years that we've lived here. And they're very connected, and they had good jobs. And so they were very happy and content in Wisconsin. And so I went to my son first, and I said, hypothetically, if I said we were thinking about moving, what would you think? And I kid you not, he said, well, Mom, it's funny you say that, because just yesterday, a lady came into my work that's a landlord, and she mentioned she has 2 places for rent, and the price was extremely affordable. And he had been talking to his really good friend that was now in a situation where he needed to move because his rent was being raised again and he didn't want to pay the higher rent, and that was going to happen on May 1st. And so my son and his friend were talking about finding a place together, and this woman came in to my son's work offering a place to live. And so he was just getting ready to tell me he was going to be moving out and he was going to go look at this place. So I was like, wow, are you kidding? So it was like God already took care of it before I even said a word. And I didn't even know that God was already working. And so then I said, wow, now I got to talk to Abigail and my daughter. And so, and my son said, oh, well, she was just talking to two of her friends and they're going to get a place this summer. And I said, really? So they were all planning on moving out. And my daughter was going to move out later in the summer because that's when there was going to be availability. And one of her friends was waiting to hear on a job because she could have ended up anywhere from Green Bay all the way down to Milwaukee. And I said, I'm going to pray about that. I'm going to pray that they have a place open up next week, because I couldn't move forward unless I knew my children were taken care of. I know they're adults, but I don't care. And I wasn't going to do anything until I knew my kids were taken care of. And so I started praying, and I talked to my daughter, and she said the same thing. And at first she got upset because she's like, well, what, you're just going to move and leave me, and I don't have a plan and I can't leave till this summer. And I said, no, I didn't say that, because I would have literally waited to put my house up for sale. I was in no hurry. There was no hurry for me to do anything because I didn't have to do anything. And so I was going to make sure it worked for everyone. And I was praying that God would just, if this was to be, every single aspect would be taken care of, including my adult children. So I just started immediately praying that all her friends would find out if they were going to get their jobs, and that it would be close to the apartment that they chose, and that an apartment would become available before the end of the summer, because I knew if I moved, it would probably be sooner than later. That would be my preference, just because of the turmoil going on in the world right now. I don't want to be caught in the middle of moving when everything crashes, because I believe the economy is getting ready to crash. That's a whole nother story. So my daughter, I just told her, I says, I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to pray your friends here sooner than they should, and an apartment opens up at the place you guys have chose, because they had already been looking at different places. And so the end of that week, God opened all the doors for her and her friends, and an apartment came open. They got a call from the leasing office. They went and looked at the apartment. It was one that they all liked. It was a 3-bedroom townhome, and it was going to be extremely affordable for all the girls, and it was only going to be like $600 a month for each one. And they had one open up for April. And I just, thank you, Jesus, right? So they signed a lease that Monday after this whole thing started. And then I knew, okay, God is serious. This is where I'm supposed to go. And so I called the realtor, and I told her, I says, I'm going to put my house on the market. I said, I'm not in any hurry. I go, I'm going to do it on my children's timeline, and I want to make sure I stay in my home until May, because my son wasn't going to sign his lease and get into his place until May 1st. That's when his roommate had to move out of his apartment. And so I told the realtor, I says, I'm not willing to budge until May. And then my kids were doing a theater show called Godspell. And I said, okay, we're going to stay long enough to do Godspell. And with that, they have a class that they have to take. And the class wasn't going to have a showcase until May 16th. So I said, okay, it's my 4-year anniversary for living in our home in Wisconsin on May 21st. That's when we moved here in the year of COVID, 2020. I moved to Wisconsin. And so I said, just for giggles, let's make that the dead end date. I will be out of my home on May 20th, and God is going to just work everything out. And so the realtor said, okay. And she got the paperwork ready. I started cleaning and, getting things ready. But of course we had 6 people living and trying to divide things up into 3 different households. And so it wasn't going to be show ready because I just had so much stuff. So I told her I refuse an open house. I only want people to come in that are pre-qualified and can truly buy our home. And I am not budging until May 21st. I said that's the day they can have possession of my home. So I didn't want to close until that day. And we put it on the market. And 2 days later, we got a full price offer that wanted to close in April. And I said, no. I said, I'm not moving until May. And I'm not moving until the 21st. And I'm not willing to do anything because I didn't have to, again. And I just needed it to be as stress-free as possible for me. So the buyers came back and said, we can live here for free and no extra. And they still needed to close in April. And they were paying cash for my house. So they were willing to just let us stay. And I was like, oh my gosh, because now we're going to have the money to put down on the home in Alaska, but we're not leaving. We're not going anywhere. So God's like answering more prayers. And in the meantime, my sister and them were deciding, like these stories are building together at the same time. So she's going, they put in the offer on the house in Alaska and it was accepted, of course. And the man that was selling the house had mentioned him and his wife were looking to buy property in Alaska that had a view, and there was none for sale. Like they were all completely sold and there hadn't been any lots available for years. And he was praying about it. The 2 pieces of land that my sister owned that they were going to build on was a view lot and the only ones available. And the man was like, oh my gosh, it's another answer to prayer. And so those view lots were exchanged as part of the price to buy his home. And so between our 2 families, another one of my sister's prayers was to be debt free. And between her and I, our families sharing the home, we were able to pay off the house and have no mortgage, no ridiculous modern interest rates. And we could pay off the entire property in Alaska and be debt free for both families. And I'm like, God is answering prayers bigger than we thought to ask. And this was all a direct result of this prayer and fasting. And I'm telling you, I've never done that before in my life. I've never done it for this amount of time. I have done like a day or a half a day or 2 days at the most, but never like this. And God is still opening doors and taking care of problems and filling out everything. So now, fast forward, my home is sold. We are purging and getting rid of everything. And I had one more prayer for God because we got the moving estimates and it was astronomical. So I had prayed that God would bring us an offer for my home for $15,000 more than we asked to cover the moving cost. And the offer we got, not only did we get to stay an extra month, but the offer we got was exactly $15,000 over asking price, and it covered the cost of our move. And I was like, wow. And God is still answering prayers. We had so many prayers about all the kids getting jobs closer to their apartments that they were moving into, and they did. Every single one of them. They are a very close commute. They're living really close and working really close, and they've gotten all set up. And it's just been a whirlwind of answered prayers. And so I know for the first time in my life, I feel 100% that I am walking in the will of God. And I have so much confidence in that because He is opening doors that were dead bolted shut and were never going to open. And they are just flying open and the red carpet is rolled out. And I know we are moving forward with so much confidence. And I'm like, I can't wait to see what else He's going to do. And the kids are still excited about going. I have teenagers that have so many good friends here. And they love their friends. And we had a great theater community here and they love them. and they're willing to just go. And they said, no, we are so excited and they want to go. And I'm just in awe. So that's my story. And I don't know how it's going to end because we're not there yet. But right now we're 10 days from leaving. And, we got a major road trip ahead of us. But God is still answering prayers. I'm praying that all my kids will return to God, that my prodigals will come home. And I think this is another, God is moving because, they walked away from the church a long time ago, but maybe now that I'm not here being an enabler, they're going to have to rely on a bigger power. And that's a good thing. So thank you for listening. God is real. He is answering prayers. And I just love my Jesus. Amen.